Good morning, everyone. It's a privilege to be here. I'll keep my remarks brief. Lots of interesting conversation going on already. The reference to the ecosystem approach, as we've heard so far. I think the opportunity for us is quite real and sort of something that we can shape in the next 5 years or so. As you might know, the government of India, MeitY, released the National Open Digital Ecosystems consultation paper back in 2020. And it sort of lays down the foundational thinking on what does an open digital ecosystem look like and what we might need to do to shape that in various sectors of the economy. And so that consultation paper provides an excellent foundation. And there's further work that has gone on in the court system over the last many years on e-courts and so on, which is becoming more and more mainstream. And I think the last 2 years, especially as the pandemic hit, it became ever more obvious that digital is not only possible, but actually a good way to move our sort of justice system forward in all its forms. I think from my vantage point, I've started working just recently on setting up a fund to support efforts to build critical infrastructure. And India is a pioneer, as we all know, with Aadhaar and payment system, the unified payments interface, and so on. I think there are some lessons we can learn from other sectors of the economy and see how we can apply it to our justice system and going forward. So I'll give you one example of the use of infrastructure that Sachin referred to in his remarks. I think um, the idea of imagining infrastructure is so critical. And I'll give you one private sector example to illustrate the point. If you look at the example of Uber or Amazon or Airbnb and so on, um, what these companies have done is they've scaled dramatically globally and fairly rapidly. Just in a short few years, they've been able to have billions of users across the world. And what they've done to scale is they've leveraged public infrastructure that was created over the last 30 years. For instance, the internet is public infrastructure. The GPS was public infrastructure and publicly funded in the past. Maps were publicly funded. Digital payment systems have been built out in the last sort of almost 2 decades now, right? What the ingenuity of these large companies is that they were able to leverage these different elements of public infrastructure and build something that could dramatically scale. Now, except in India, where we have the privilege of having had Aadhaar and the unified payments interface, in many parts of the world, this kind of infrastructure thinking is completely absent, right? And so what you have is a number of people trying to create an app for something or the other, and somebody else creating another app for something else, but they never talk to each other. So I think the opportunity ahead of us is to imagine what the infrastructure layer might look like, and then the app layer might look like. Because the infrastructure layer can enable a number of apps to be built. When I say apps, products and services to be built on top, whether by the government or the private sector. And the best case is, the unified payments interface in India. I know it's a different domain, but just to illustrate the point, uh, because we built out the unified payments interface, now we have Google Pay and WhatsApp Pay and Paytm and then a whole bunch of apps, Phone Pay and various others that have come on top, which are just otherwise what each one would have done is they would have had to build the entire payment stack, build the interoperability with banks and so on and so forth. Therefore, minimizing the opportunity for innovation at the app layer. So once we imagine what the public infrastructure layer looks like in the legal system, and focus on that and back the construction and maintenance and upgrade of that maintenance of the infrastructure, right? Then it'll open up the opportunity for a lot of people to come and build on top of that, and therefore be able to innovate for various purposes that the traditional system, the system as we call it, government and the court system, might or might not be able to do, right? And that's the power of the ecosystem approach, where there are a number of functions where government and the court system would do, and then there are some functions where the private sector, entrepreneurs, civil society can come and innovate and build solutions fit for purpose for certain niche groups that might require some of this help. So I think I would just like to say that this imagination of the infrastructure layer and the app layer as two distinct but connected layers would be perhaps the most critical decision that this group will both discuss and take a decision on in the next few months, because that will shape the ecosystem that we want to collectively build. I'll just pause here and would love to listen to the conversation as we take it forward. Thank you, Sachin.